Hello and welcome, everyone. Grateful for your presence with us today. My name is Aaron Cobb, and I'm Senior Scholar of Character for the Educating Character Initiative. I'd like to start with a few announcements, and then I'll introduce our speakers for today. First, as is our custom, we want to invite you to join the ECI community. We love opportunities to connect and to learn with and from you. Joining the community will enable us to remain connected and for you to hear what's happening at the ECI. Second, our focus in this spring webinar series is on how to cultivate communities of character. Last month, we hosted a webinar with Michael Lamb and Jennifer Rothschild about building community and capacity through empowering faculty and staff. You can find a recording of that webinar on our ECI webpage. We have two more webinar sessions this spring after today. The first one in April will feature a panel session titled Creating Capacity to Educate Character, Lessons from 3 Educating Character Initiative Grantees. This panel features Paul DeBell from Fort Lewis College, Heather Keith from Radford University, and Glenn Sanders from King University. In May, we'll host Rachel Baker from Calvin University and the Network for Vocation in Undergraduate Education, who will discuss vocation as an avenue into character development. Third, in early April, we're going to be hosting our 2024-2025 Teacher Scholar Grant Recipients session to hear lessons from our grantees for our individual Teacher Scholar grants from last year. We're excited to hear about their experiences and the implications of their work during this year of grant funding. And then finally, our second book club session is approaching quickly. On April 3rd, participants will be discussing Nathan King's book, The Excellent Mind. Future books include Valerie Carr's Sage Warrior, and then Jonathan Brandt, Edward Brooks, and Michael Lamb's Cultivating Virtue in the University. We hope that you'll register and participate in each of these events. Now I want to turn our attention to today's session. We're going to begin with a 30-minute presentation, followed by a brief activity, and then we'll transition into a space for open discussion and questions from participants on this call. We'll have people monitoring the chats for questions, or you can raise your hand directly to be recognized. We're excited to hear from you as you raise your questions. So let me introduce today's speakers. Cristy Guleserian serves as Executive Director of Principled Innovation at Arizona State University, Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College. Cristy's background in character education, social emotional learning, interpersonal communication, and organizational development has provided a foundation for her work at ASU, where she worked collaboratively with faculty, staff, students, and community partners to integrate character into culture, curriculum, and practice. Alma Barnett serves as the Director of Employer Relations and Talent Services at Arizona State University. Alma participated in the inaugural cohort of the Foundations of Principled Change Community of Practice, and she notes that, quote, introducing reflective and relational practices to her team has transformed the way they communicate. It has encouraged vulnerability and authenticity, allowing them to address issues more effectively and empathetically. Collaboration has improved, and decision-making has become more inclusive and considerate, as they are more attuned to each other's perspectives and well-being. Cristy and Alma, it's good to welcome you to this conversation. We look forward to hearing from you. Looks like we need to mute.
There we go. Thank you so much, Aaron, for that introduction. And hello to everyone. Thank you for being here. It's nice to see some familiar faces on the call. I do want to share, Alma apparently lost internet service. So she is on campus right now, and there's something going on with our internet. So you might just get me, and maybe she'll join us in a minute, but hopefully she's able to jump on. But we will navigate uncertainty, which is what we do. So I'm going to start by inviting you to participate in what we usually start our sessions with, which is a 90-second pause. We love to begin our sessions this way because it helps us to transition from one space into another space. It helps us to ground ourselves, settle in, and just be present with each other as we begin our time together. And it also is intentional. It helps us to cultivate that practice of slowing down and being present. And we do this because it's part of the foundation of practicing what we refer to as principled innovation, which is our approach to character formation at Arizona State University. So I am going to just invite you now to use the next 90 seconds in whatever way you need that helps you to kind of transition from whatever you were doing right before and into this moment now. I'm going to go ahead and set a timer for that. Okay, invite you to come back into the space, um, and let's get started. So we do that to to really cultivate that practice of being present, helps us to foster that habit of being present. And these are things that we encourage those that are participating in our work to integrate into their daily activities. So we'll talk a little bit more about how we do that as we move forward. So I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of context around our university and what really motivates us to do this work around character. So we have our ASU charter that is really all about how we care for our students and our community and ensuring that we are being inclusive in everything that we do and caring for the communities that we serve. And we first must ensure that we're supporting and uplifting those who make our work possible. So our staff and our colleagues, and our role there is to be present and support our students in the best ways that we can. And this commitment that we have to being inclusive and responsible for the overall health of the communities that we serve really extends beyond students to include the dedicated teams that we collaborate with on a daily basis. And so change at ASU, if any of you have been to ASU or are familiar with it, our kind of secret sauce is all about innovation. So we are a very innovative university community, and that can sometimes feel a little bit overwhelming. So change at ASU can be very fast-paced, and it makes it even more important for us to foster a workplace culture that prioritizes well-being and balance and mutual support, so that we can have that stronger foundation to better serve our students and the broader communities that we serve. So investing in our internal community actually allows us to extend that impact that we have outward. One of the ways that we ensure we're enacting our charter is through what we refer to as design aspirations. So ASU has we have 9 design aspirations, 8 of which have been existing for about 20 plus years. About 2 years ago, we had President Crow, our university president, identified a 9th design aspiration, which is practice principled innovation. And practicing principled innovation for us means that we are enacting our charter in a way that is placing character and values at the center of our decisions and actions. But how do we foster the conditions and the capacities to actually enact this design aspiration of practicing principled innovation? So our approach to doing that is through communities of practice. We have this evolving ecosystem of COPs that are forming at the university. And this slide shows in the colorful dots are the communities of practice that our principled innovation team really holds some responsibility for facilitating. And then everything else is showing the different colleges and the units that are participating in these communities of practice. So this is our approach to really fostering that character literacy, but also to cultivate and model the individual team and organizational dispositions and relationships and practices that that we need to intentionally foster that character development and that practice of practical wisdom as we're engaging in all of the innovative work that we do across the university and supporting our students. And so today we're going to actually focus just on the orange dot that says Thrive Collective. So that is one of the communities of practice that we're going to talk about today. Uh, so character is really at the core of what we're talking about when we're talking about principled innovation. And character and leadership, we recognize starts with the individual. So it's important, and it starts with understanding who you are and how you support your team and connect with your colleagues and serve your communities. And character is really the foundation of our moral compass that deeply connects to our heart's capacity for empathy and integrity and that unwavering commitment to understand humanity, which is really at the core of practicing principled innovation. And so we're thinking about character as leading from like who we are and not just from like our power or our position or our ego, but from that authentic, genuine self that we get to bring into the work that we do. And so how do we start to move from like this transactional way of leading and engaging with our teams to more of a relational approach to doing so? And we also recognize that character isn't all about the individual, that it's also about how we engage with others, how we support our teams, how we connect with our colleagues, and how we understand the individuals that we're working with on a daily basis. We think about things like how we create the environments that are conducive to flourishing and thriving, and how we really are engaging with each other as well. So we think of character as not being just individual, but also relational and contextual. And we also recognize that in today's context, especially in higher ed, that one constant leaders and teams are facing is change. Um, we experience individual change, relational change, organizational change, social change, and navigating change can be complex and it can be messy and it can be very uncomfortable. And so to navigate it effectively, it intentionally takes those character dispositions and virtues and practices that we can cultivate as individuals and as teams. And so as we're thinking about all of the work that we're doing at ASU specifically, that helps us to best support our students and to remain innovative and really placing character at the center of everything that we do, how do we support our teams um, in doing this work and also sustain momentum as well as prioritize well-being so that we can flourish individually and collectively. So these are the kinds of questions that we started asking ourselves when we started our work around character formation within the university. And so our approach to this really begins with cultivating the conditions and the capacities to collaboratively evolve as individuals, to build trust and connection, and to cultivate that responsibility and purpose that we can engage together as teams that helps us to engage more deeply in community as we are just within our everyday work and practices. And then by doing this, by cultivating these conditions and capacities, we are beginning to engage practical wisdom. So really knowing the right action in the right context at the right moment for the right reasons so that we can flourish in that process of change. And everything, the comments we hear often at ASU are everything is so fast paced. And, we talk about moving at the speed of innovation. And some of the actual pushback we get is, how do we practice principled innovation in that thoughtful and intentional way if we're always going at such a fast pace? So we talk about it as like going slow to go fast. It provides that foundation, that capacity to be able to maintain and sustain that momentum in a fast-paced environment. And we don't see this as like a linear process, that this is a continual process of becoming that impacts our environments, our dispositions, our relationships, and the practices that we each have as individuals and as teams as we engage that practical wisdom in our individual and collective decision making. So our hope is really to foster those flourishing individuals, teams, and systems within our university community and in our society as a whole. And so one of our um, approaches to doing this within our community of practice ecosystem is what we call Thrive Collective. Thrive Collective is a very experiential opportunity for our teams across ASU, and we're actually getting ready to move this into outside of the university as well. But it's a holistic approach that was a collaboration between our principled innovation team at the ASU Mary Lou Fulton College for Teaching and Learning Innovation and Ashoka, which is an organization that really nurtures collaboration of the world's leading social entrepreneurs. And so for a couple of years, we had been trying to figure out a way for us to collaborate. And this really was a way for us to bring our two missions together and to create an opportunity for teams to come together and foster those individual and relational skills, mindsets, dispositions, and practices that are foundational to centering character and values in our decisions and actions. And Thrive Collective, it begins with this two-person or two-day in-person retreat. And then we follow up with monthly virtual gatherings. We include coaching and peer support throughout the entire experience and beyond the initial experience that we have. And there's an ongoing community of practice. So people continue to come together and identify those practices that they want to continue to foster, and they do that within community together. The two-day retreat that we begin with, it's all about relationships. So we really focus on the relationship with ourselves, the relationship that we have with others, and the relationship that we have with the systems and the environments in which we're working and engaging together. And by beginning with that first retreat experience, it really helps us to both immerse the participants in what we mean by creating conditions for transformation. And it also is a way for us to model that for them as well. And so we really begin by focusing intentionally on how we create the retreat space that attends to both our sensory and physical needs while we're there. We really try to cultivate an environment where participants can fully immerse themselves in reflection, where they can connect with each other and continue to practice new ways of being in community, but also new ways of slowing down and beginning to think about how we show up to our work in a very different way. We are very intentional about the space that we use, about reducing distractions. So we'll encourage people to leave all technology outside of the retreat space so that we can just be present together in those moments. We think of the physical space as a participant in the experience itself, recognizing that this is a very different way of engaging for many of our participants. So we start with like multiple choices for them to slow down. So things such as like sound immersions or mindful walks. We focus on practices like reflective journaling, and they really help participants to ground themselves and prepare for the experience that they're going to have collectively within the space. We also engage um, so metaphor-based and storytelling activities that are integrated throughout the retreat. Um, we really encourage dialogue and collaboration. We give them frameworks in order to engage in a different way of connecting with each other and dialoguing with each other. Um, so this is a wonderful way for us to begin this experience, having this like powerful front end experience together. But we also recognize that retreat experience can't be the only experience that they have. We've all shown up to workshops or conferences where we walk away with some new understandings of what it is that we learned there, but we show up then Monday morning and uh, it might be pushed to all good intentions might be pushed to the wayside because of everything else that we're experiencing when we come back to the regular environment that we're in. So we really focus on the retreat as being kind of that initial, I guess, disruptor to the way that we do things, but also how do we intentionally follow up with continued community of practice gatherings. We also encourage people to pair up with a peer within their cohort so that they can be encouragement partners with each other. And this helps them to continue that intentional practice as we continue to evolve together, kind of after that initial experience. So this was going to be Alma's part, but since she's unable to be here because of uh, technology, number one in innovation, and our Wi-Fi is down, unfortunately. But what some of the things, and I'll just try to share what Alma has shared with me as having been a participant in this experience. So she was in our first cohort, and I don't think she would mind if I shared the story, but Alma was the person who came into our retreat with her laptop and was very hesitant to move away from being connected to that laptop. And she kept it in front of her, and we had to really kind of coax her to let go of the technology and to be okay with being disconnected from the outside world for just a bit of time. But she talks quite a bit about what changed in her by participating not just in this experience, but also in the continued community of practice experience. So she talks quite a bit about how she shifted from like frustration in that initial moment of being asked to show up in a space in a different way than what she had been used to. But how she shifted from that kind of frustration to curiosity, and that taking that time to really listen, not just to others who are in the space, but also to herself. And as she continued to engage in the different practices that we introduced, that she started seeing some small changes that she was recognizing in herself and the way that she was leading, that she started moving away from thinking about like improving performance and outcomes to how, as a leader, does she impact the people that she's working with. Um, and she'll talk quite a bit about like at the heart of the matter was that she really needed to lead with the heart. That nurturing relationships through the community of practice kind of led to a shift in her perspective, and really prompt her to share that with others as well. So I will say that Alma, I really wish you could hear from her directly right now, but she has been one of the champions of this work because she has totally changed the way that she engages with her team and the way that they think about things like productivity. Like, what does it actually mean to be productive? And this is a slide that she made that she recognized that her productivity kind of goals and outcomes moved from like being very professional and accomplishing tasks and contributing to the institutional success and student success and meeting those expectations and outcomes that we have on us, um, which are all good things to do, but that she started shifting to productivity meaning to her building relationships and trust and really being authentic and engaging those multiple and diverse perspectives in the work that they were doing and redefining success as being how the team engaged together and how they served students and partners as a collective and not just thinking about what those kind of business driven outcomes were. So that kind of brings us to our own practice here. So one of the practices that we introduce within our Thrive retreat, and that we then do on a regular basis to kind of develop that habituation of this practice, is an activity that we call "What Am I Noticing Now?" So we're going to give you all an opportunity to practice this experience as well. I'll give you a little bit of context around it. So one of the things that we feel is essential as we're thinking about our decision making and how we support our students and how we innovate and ensuring that character and virtue is at the center of that. We recognize that we also need to be observant of what's going on within us, between us, around us, and that's something when you're in a very fast-paced environment can be difficult to do. And so we've found that by integrating this practice around observation and noticing, it helps us to kind of develop that muscle and also that connection with others when we do it in partnership with other individuals on our teams. So what we're going to do is we're going to have you, well, we'll find a partner for you. We're going to put you into breakout rooms. You're going to be randomly matched up with a person. And Alma and I were going to model this for you, but I'll model it from a one-sided perspective to begin. So we'll ask you to face each other on the screen. And take turns sharing and listening what you're noticing. So we'll give you 60 seconds each. And we're going to invite you to continuously share for that 60 seconds. So continue to talk. But while you're talking, what you're doing is observing what's happening within you. So what thoughts are running through your head? What feelings might you be experiencing? What are you noticing in your environment? What's coming up for you. Maybe it's physiological sensations like I'm hungry, or I'm noticing that that navigating uncertainty in doing a webinar when the partner isn't able to be here is a little difficult. That being in this space during this time of day in my office, it feels a little bit warm because the way that the sun is pouring in. I'm noticing that 30 minutes goes by really quickly when you're sharing slides and doing a talk. I'm noticing a little bit of gratitude for the fact that all of you took some time out of your day to show up and be here. So these are the kinds of things that we can notice. So we're going to go ahead and put you into breakout rooms. One person, you'll introduce yourselves. Maybe you've met before, maybe you haven't. And we'll give you 60 seconds each to just practice noticing. And so once the first person goes, switch, and you will have an opportunity to both notice and practice that listening. So I just want to give ourselves a couple of minutes for some reflection. Um, I know that was a very quick practice, but I'm curious if anybody would like to come off mute and share how that felt for you to really name those inner experiences out loud. Any brave souls want
I'd
to?
like to go. Well, I think it was a nice session. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody raised up her hand, so let me.
No, no, no. Please go ahead. I will be the second.
Thank you so much. Pardon me, I was supposed to have raised my hand before going. It was quite nice just jumping into it, having an impromptu time to just say whatever came to your mind. But I was smart. I asked my partner to go first so I could listen to her. It was actually nice. And being yourself, becoming. Thank you.
Mm, thank you for sharing that.
That
Other,
was belonging. You're right.
thank you.
In our room, I think what stood out was the instant connection, which coming from arts and humanities and computing and engineering, when the language of art and humanities is absolutely critical to computing professionals and engineers, especially today in the times of AI. So that was very good personally for my heart.
Thank you for sharing that. It does instantly, even with people you have never met before, it's a way to, like you said, foster that connection or like acknowledge each other's humanity right from the start while having a little bit of like agency in what it is that you're sharing with each other. So the comfort level is your own. Other other thoughts or reflections on that?
Sure, I'll share my thought. So my whole kind of approach to learning or philosophy of learning is that pretty much anyone can learn pretty much anything, and yet all the time, myself included, we don't learn, right? And I think it usually has to do with our emotions and our ideas about our identity. So for me, this is very refreshing and great that you guys are starting with us actually, looking at and thinking about what we're feeling and acknowledging those feelings. I think so often we're out of touch with where we're at, and what a great way to start. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's something that I feel like we're often encouraged to leave some of that, outside of the workspace. And we are together so often when we're working in teams that being able to foster those authentic relationships and actually be authentic about what we're feeling, what we're experiencing, and how we communicate that with each other, that it leads to this space of being able to work more collaboratively together. And it fosters that environment of being able to um, take risks and be creative and share, ideas that we might not be willing to share or talk about if we haven't fostered those relationships first. Um, so in interest of time, I think we're going to go ahead and um, move to questions.
It looks like there are a couple people with hands up.
Right.
Let's see. If you have your hand raised, go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question. Can't really see that. There you go. Go ahead.
Okay. So my hand being up was just to share that was a privilege really to be paired with the last speaker who was quite humbling. And then for me too, it was very refreshing because as I told her, this time yesterday I had a bad headache. And to have the opportunity to meet with another person and interact so deeply, all within less than 5 minutes, was a great deal. Thank you for this, and I wish you the best. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. Can I make just a note on that. Something that we hear quite a bit and that has come out in our research around communities of practice is that time seems to be that barrier. And I think we hear this quite a bit in character education and just about everything that we do. People feel like they don't have the time. And so that, such a short exercise can create connection in a very short period of time. That, and when you think about the 90-second pause that we engaged at the beginning of the session, that also is a very easy, low time commitment practice that we can integrate that has quite a bit of benefit the more that we practice it. It develops that muscle for us and that habit.
Marissa.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, it was funny because, or not funny exactly, but during the night the exercise we just did, I noticed that we spent less time than we were supposed to on doing what we were supposed to, and then it became this conversation about the grant and giving advice about the grant and other things that were going on, but it was like a back and forth conversation. And that made me reflect a lot about the project and this idea of time. And I was thinking it was actually what I was reflecting on during the conversation that we talked about when we were talking, or the exercise, that it seems like we can never, I can't ask for more than 1 hour of faculty's time. We never get more than 1 hour. Um, and we can't get them that often. And being a faculty member myself, I understand why it's so hard to get people together for more than that time. But it, it, it makes me wonder, how are we going to get this kind of slowness and community at the level that you're talking about without the 2-day workshop?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good question. We've been fortunate to have people who have been willing to commit to coming together for that 2-day retreat and the ongoing experiences. But I will say that that has been a long time coming. Um, so I mentioned that this work started about 2 years ago, university-wide, but at our Teachers College, we've been doing this for about 8 years now. So it takes time to kind of foster the environments and the conditions to uh, engage people in a way that they can feel is valuable. And so what we found is how do we ensure that we are communicating what that value add is for their own work. And I think that's an individualized approach. For us, it was really about listening and fostering relationships and taking the time to do that in whatever way we can, in whatever space we can, and using the time that we were already gathering to introduce some of these practices as well.
I'm wondering, go ahead, Shereen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to say that thank you for that, because I struggle all the time where I'm like, I don't have time. Today is too packed. I can't even attend this webinar. And then you just prove that starting with a 90-second grounding and having a 2-minute conversation with someone across the country by video. First of all, we just proved like these are the good uses of technology. Secondly, you can offer these connection moments when you feel like you don't have enough time. And of course, a 2-day retreat is much better, but you just proven that you can still do it if you have that intention and everyone is in that listening space and hearing the other person. So I really just want to say I'm grateful for you doing that today and showing us that this is really, really important work.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a huge time lift. And I think it's consistency that is really the key.
I'm wondering if I want to ask a question about communities of practice as a formative sort of ethos for character development. And I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about what makes communities of practice different from a learning community or a professional committee or something of that nature, and then sort of if what those distinctives are and like how those attributes of the community of practice themselves have an impact on the character of their members and the character of the community formed.
Sure. I have a great slide for this that I don't have like right on hand, but happy to share it out with everyone. Um, so I think that the idea of like shared leadership, shared practice, and shared learning is really what's key for communities of practice. So for us, our team has kind of taken the responsibility for launching those COPs, but eventually transitioning those communities of practice to the individuals who are part of the community to be able to, set the agendas and determine what it is that's really a value to the community themselves. Um, so some of the research that we have done on communities of practice that we just finished 3 years of data collection. One of the things that we found is that they really are not as conducive to um, like getting particular projects done. So we tried to shift our communities of practice approach into some of our work groups, and that was difficult for people initially. And so I think what makes it different is that when you have people who are coming together who are um, intrinsically motivated to engage with each other around a common interest and a common practice, um, that right there will be, a good foundation for your community of practice. But I feel that the thing that makes it different is the intentional focus on relationships and on that shared learning and leadership, um, and the practices that we do together as a community. But what we have found is that those that are engaging in the communities of practice, we might be coming together and learning these practices together. But we're also very explicit about how they can take these practices and bring them back into those work groups. So it might not be that you're running a work group as a community of practice, but how do you take a 90-second pause and bring it into the work group so that everybody is grounded and starting, at a place where they're fully present and able to listen and work together? How do you, maybe start a work group with a reflective question that provides opportunity for people to develop that connection with each other? So I think that there are ways to bring elements of the communities of practice into those work groups where we're actually focusing on getting tasks done, which we still have to do.
Wonderful. I want to create space for other people to ask additional questions. If you want to drop your question in the chat, you're welcome to do so. Or if you want to raise your hand, we have space for maybe one or two more questions before we bring things to a close today. So let me give space to some others if they would like to ask their question. If not, I've got a couple more that I would like to ask. Let me go ahead and ask this one. Suppose a group comes to you, let's say it's participants from across the ECI, and they want to form a community of practice across institutions or around a shared interest or maybe they're interested in a particular virtue type, or they're interested in a particular type of community engagement as a pedagogy for character formation or something of that nature. And they're coming to you and they're asking for advice about how to start a community of practice, like how to design it from the ground up. What are the sorts of things that you're going to um, invite them to do as they design their community of practice? What are the practices? What are the habits? What are the mindsets? What are the sorts of commitments that it takes to design a community of practice and sort of get it going in the start?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, so I think the first thing would be starting with that shared purpose. So why are we bringing people together in this community of practice? What is that shared purpose that we have? And can we all agree that the purpose for us coming together is what we define it. So I think walking people through, we do several different activities that can help us to kind of come to what that shared purpose is, and starting with like a values sort activity is something that we've found very helpful, so that we're all very clear about what our individual purpose and goals are for coming together in this community, and also what are our collective goals for this community, and what's our collective purpose. Putting intentional time into that part of it is a way to kind of anchor and ground that community of practice in a way that provides a good launching pad for whatever you do together as a community moving forward. Also ensuring that everyone has a voice, that this is a collective effort. So you might have one person who has indicated that they would like to get this, excuse me, get this community of practice started. And they might know people who they want to invite in. But then being willing as that initiator of it to step back and let go of, I guess, any preconceived notions of what you as an individual would want it to be. So this takes a lot of listening, a lot of honesty, like with ourselves and with the community as a whole, a lot of perspective taking, so that we understand what each person is hoping to get out of the community. And also, some humility to be able to recognize when like an initial direction might not be what the whole community wants. So really having the community guide that, and recognizing that it takes time and it takes commitment to foster those COPs. I'd be happy to share out with anyone who's on the webinar. We have a whole set of resources that we can share that are all about this exact question, like how do you get started, and how do you set your agendas, and how do you ensure that you're really being guided by inquiry that that helps you to stay focused on what it is that community's shared purpose is.
That's wonderful. I'm going to give you a chance in just a second to have a final word, but I wanted to sort of summarize some of the key themes that I've heard across the conversation today that I think are worth focusing on here. We've been thinking a lot about building community and building trust, and I think the key element here that you've mentioned is this sort of intentional use of time and the intentional use of practices that ground us in our community spaces well, not only with each other, but with ourselves and with the physical environment as well. So the themes of time and trust were key here, and that sort of gives me space to ask a final question for you to have the final word. And I'm just interested in hearing your thoughts about what are the particular character traits or the practices that help with the building of trust within communities of practice.
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think that so many of the character traits and virtues really help us develop trust. But I would always go back to those we would say character assets of honesty, being able to be honest with ourselves and with each other about what it is that we're experiencing, what we need, and what we experience together. Humility, I think, is a key character asset to always be striving towards. Being able to see where we are, where others can bring value to the community as a whole, and being able to admit when like maybe we are wrong, or if we have done something or said something, or inadvertently had created a space that makes people feel uncomfortable. we have to be able to admit that and to share that with each other, and creating a space that that allows us to do that, I think is key. I would also say empathy and perspective taking, also key to understanding what somebody's experience is, what their needs are, what they might be feeling in any given moment. And I would also, I'd like to throw in like joy and humor, and being able to create a space where we can connect just as humans, I think goes a long way in fostering trust as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cristy. And please extend our thanks to Alma as well. I know she was intimately involved with creating the slides, and we're sorry that she wasn't able to participate because of technology. But thank you so much for your presence with us today and for teaching us so much about the work that you're doing together and building communities of practice. I'd like to remind all of the participants on our call today that our next webinar session is on April 17th from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. And we'll be featuring 3 of our grantees in that space for a panel discussion titled Creating Capacity to Educate Character, Lessons from 3 Educating Character Initiative grantees. Thanks so much for your time today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.